Sexton's husband came home drunk like he had done many times before, except this time it would end much differently. A fight ensued between the two. Her husband grabbed a .38 caliber pistol, shot her in the head, and then himself. The bullet entered above her left eye, penetrated 2 inches deep into her brain, ricocheted around the left side of her skull, and then exited behind her left ear. Amazingly, when police arrived, they discovered Sexton was not only alive, but she was making tea, all the while with a gunshot wound in her head. A combination of shock, adrenaline, and most importantly the bullet missing vital portions of her brain allowed her to not only be alive, but conscious. She was airlifted to USA Medical Center and given a craniectomy. Today she lives a normal life. Next is arguably the most famous gunshot survivor in recent history, due to her fight for women's rights in the Middle East. Malala was a 15-year-old Pakistani activist who was quite vocal on social media about women's rights in Pakistan, despite receiving multiple death threats. On October 9, 2012, while walking to school with her classmates, a Taliban gunman saw her and ordered her to kneel down. The gunman drew a .45 caliber revolver, aimed it downward at her head, and then fired a single round. The bullet passed through her left eye socket, traveled through the middle part of her left ear, and into her left shoulder. Due to the trajectory of the bullet, only a small portion of the left frontal lobe of her brain received damage, and it was limited to only one hemisphere. She was given a craniectomy and later on recovered. She would go on to receive the Nobel Peace Prize for her actions on women's rights. In August of 2006, Rachel Brzezinski was a typical 17-year-old high school student. She and her friends had heard of an abandoned haunted barn out on the countryside. They drove to the barn at night and walked onto the property. The owner of the property heard trespassers and shot at them in the dark with a .22 caliber rifle. One of the rounds struck Brzezinski on the back right side of her head, passed from the right hemisphere into the left hemisphere towards the front of her head, and stopped just above her left eye. The .22 caliber bullet was a hollow point, so when it struck her head, it mushroomed out and doubled in size. A total of 4 lobes in her brain were damaged, and even worse, the bullet crossed both hemispheres. Fortunately, Brzezinski was quickly rushed to the hospital and underwent an emergency craniectomy. Though bullet and bone fragments were removed from the brain, the bullet itself could not be recovered. Additionally, she had a portion of her temporal lobe removed due to it being in a necrotic state. Though she has fully recovered, she does have memory issues and continues physical therapy to this day, but overall has had a fairly normal life. She was even featured on the cover of People magazine in 2011.